Hey, dreamers, welcome back to your Dream Coach podcast. I wanted to start today's episode with something that I think a lot of high performers really don't say out loud. Have you ever had a moment where you paused and you thought, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing? So why doesn't this feel the way I thought it would? Like you're showing up, you're working hard, you're growing. From the outside looking in, your life might even look really successful, but internally, there's this quiet tension. Maybe it feels like pressure. Maybe it feels like you're always chasing the next thing. Maybe it feels like no matter how much you accomplish, it's never quite enough. Well, what I found through coaching high performers, building businesses, and honestly walking through this myself is that this isn't a strategy problem. It's not that you need to work harder. It's not that you need to have a better plan. It's that there are mindset blocks operating underneath the surface that you don't even realize are there. And what makes them so powerful is that they're hidden inside the very traits that made you successful in the first place. So today, I want to walk you through the hidden mindset blocks that I see over and over again, and how shifting these is what actually allows you to step into your next level, not just in business, but in your life. Well, I'm your host, Shayla Wey, and I'm a small business coach, leadership strategist, and someone who truly believes that building a business should help you build a life you love, not take over the one you already have. So let's jump in. Well, what I found is that high performers don't struggle because they lack drive, discipline, or ambition. In fact, it's the opposite. The struggle because they struggle because the traits that helped make them successful early on start to limit them at the next level. Building something from the ground up, being independent works, being detail-oriented works, being highly responsible works. But as you grow, those same traits can quietly evolve into something else. Independence turns into isolation, high standards turn into perfectionism, and responsibility turns into control. And what happens is, instead of these traits supporting your growth, they start capping it. So you begin to feel like you're doing more, but not getting the same level of return. You feel busy, but not necessarily fulfilled. You feel successful, but not necessarily aligned. And that's where frustration starts to creep in. Because now it's not about doing more, it's about becoming different. So, mindset block number one that I've seen in coaching is I have to do it all myself. Now, what I've learned is that one of the most common mindset blocks for high performers is this belief that if something is going to be done right, they need to be the one to do it. And this usually comes from a really good place. You care, you have high standards, you take ownership. But over time, this mindset creates a situation where everything becomes dependent on you. You become the decision maker, the executor, the problem solver, and the safety net all at the same time. And what I've seen happen is that this leads to a very specific kind of exhaustion, not just physical exhaustion, but mental load, because you're carrying everything. You might even tell yourself things like, it's just faster if I do it. It's easier if I handle it myself. But what you're actually doing is limiting your capacity to grow, because leadership isn't about how much you can do. It's about how much you can create through other people. And if everything depends on you, your business can't scale. Your time disappears and your stress increases. And so what I found works is making a shift from control to trust. Not blind trust, but intentional trust. So you start asking, where am I holding on to things that someone else could step into? And where am I not allowing someone else to grow because I'm trying to protect the outcome? Because when you let go in the right areas, you don't lose control. You create space. And that space is where growth happens. Now, the second mindset block I've seen is that perfectionism is disguised as standards. So what I've seen is that high performers often pride themselves on having high standards. And I remember being there, and I still have high standards, and that's a good thing. But there's a very fine line between high standards and perfectionism. And the tricky part is that perfectionism feels productive. It feels like you're refining, improving, optimizing. But what's actually happening is that you're delaying action. You're waiting until things feel ready. You're overthinking decisions. You're holding back from putting something out there because it's not quite where you want it to be. And underneath all of that is usually fear of being judged, fear of getting it wrong, fear of putting something out there that doesn't meet the standard you've set for yourself. And so, what I found is that perfectionism isn't about excellence, it's about protection. And it's about trying to control the outcome before it even happens. But the reality is, growth doesn't come from getting it perfect, it comes from getting it started. And every level I've grown to in business, in leadership, in life has come from taking action before I felt ready, from putting things out there that weren't perfect, from learning in real time. Because speed creates feedback, and feedback creates growth. And when you shift your focus from perfect to progress, everything starts to move a lot faster. Now, the third mindset block I've seen is the attachment to the outcomes. This is one that I see impact both performers and fulfillment in a really big way. Because what I've seen is that high performers often tie their sense of worth to their results. So when things are going well, they feel confident, energized, and aligned. But when things slow down and they don't work out or fall short of expectations, their entire emotional state shifts. And this creates a constant cycle of highs and lows. So you feel great when you're winning, but you feel off when you're not. And over time, this becomes exhausting because now your confidence is dependent on something external. And the truth is, outcomes are not always in your control. You can do everything right and still not get the result you expected. So if your identity is tied to outcomes, you're always going to feel unstable. And so what I found works is separating who you are from what you produce. You are not your results. You are the person creating them. And when you focus on your effort, your consistency, your growth, and your character, you do create a more stable foundation. And this is where fulfillment comes in. Because now you're not just chasing results, you're becoming someone you're proud of, regardless of the outcome. And ironically, that leads to better results. Now, the fourth mindset block I've seen is success without fulfillment. Now, this is one that doesn't get talked about enough, but it's one of the biggest reasons that people feel stuck when things are going really well. And what I've seen is that a lot of high performers build lives that look successful, but they don't feel fulfilling. They hit goals, they grow their income, they achieve things they once dreamed about, but instead of feeling satisfied, they feel empty. And the reason is because they've built their life around achievement instead of alignment. They've been so focused on what they're building that they haven't stopped to ask if it's actually what they want. And this creates a disconnect. You're winning on paper, but losing connection to yourself. And so what I've seen is that fulfillment doesn't come from achieving more. It comes from aligning what you're doing with who you are, with your values, with your vision, with how you actually want to feel day to day. Because if you build a business that drains you, it doesn't really matter how successful it is. You won't enjoy it. And this is where the LFG pillars really come into play. So leadership, fulfillment, and growth. Because fulfillment isn't something that you earn later. It's truly something that you design now. Now, the fifth mindset block that I've seen is comparison at the next level. So what I found is that comparison doesn't really ever go away as we grow. It actually evolves. At the beginning, you compare yourself to people ahead of you and think, well, I want to be there one day. But as you level up, the comparison becomes more subtle and more personal. Now you're surrounded by people who are also high performers. And instead of feeling inspired, you start questioning yourself. And you might think, well, they're further ahead than me, or they're doing it faster, or even I should be at that level by now. And what this does is it pulls you out of your own lane. And so instead of focusing on your path, you start measuring yourself against someone else's timeline. And so what I found is that this creates unnecessary pressure because you're no longer building based on your vision. You're building based on comparison. Now, the shift here is coming back to your lane. Your timeline is yours. Your path is yours. And when you focus on your growth, your progress, and your direction, you move with more clarity and confidence. Now, the sixth mindset block I've seen is outgrowing your identity. This is one of the most powerful shifts I've seen. And what I've seen and what I found is that a lot of high performers hit a ceiling, not because they're not capable, but because their identity hasn't caught up to their potential. So you might be operating at a certain level, but still seeing yourself as who you used to be. And this creates hesitation. You hold back, you second guess. You don't fully step into the next level of leadership or visibility because deep down, you're not fully owning that version of yourself yet. And the truth is, you can't consistently operate beyond the way you see yourself. So you see yourself as not quite ready, then you're going to act like that. And so what I've seen is that growth requires an identity shift. So you really have to start seeing yourself as the person who leads, who shows up, who operates at that next level before everything externally reflects it. Because your actions follow your identity. And when your identity expands, everything else follows. So what I found is that breaking through these mindset blocks isn't about fixing one thing. It's really about aligning 3 areas of your life. So leadership, how you show up, how you lead others and yourself. Number 2, fulfillment, how your life actually feels on a daily basis. Number 3, growth, how you evolve and expand over time. When these are out of alignment, these things feel heavy. And when they're aligned, they feel powerful. You move with clarity, make decisions faster. You feel more confident in who you are. And that's where your next level comes from. So if this episode resonated with you and you're starting to realize that your next level isn't about doing more, but thinking differently, I want to invite you into something I created, the LFG Business Academy on Skool. It's completely free. This is where I go deeper into concepts. We break down leadership, fulfillment, and growth in a way that is actually practical and applicable. And you're surrounded by people who are building businesses and lives that they love. So make sure to check it out. And if this version of this episode helped you step into that next version of yourself with more clarity, more confidence, and a stronger foundation, please be sure to share this episode on your socials. At the end of the day, what I found is this. The biggest thing holding high performers back isn't their work ethic. It's the mindset they're operating from. And the moment you shift that, everything changes. Because your dream life doesn't come from doing more. It comes from becoming more. Because your dream life starts with the way that you lead, the way that you live, and the way that you grow. I'll see you next time on your Dream Coach podcast.